All right, off to a late start today, but it was a very busy Monday. I don't normally have meetings in the afternoon, but today I did. And I originally thought I was going to try and stream before that meeting, get it done earlier, so I'm not stuck in the office so late in the day, but it just didn't work out that way, unfortunately. So I won't waste any time. I'm just going to jump right into kind of where I left off with a few notes here that I've left for myself to just kind of go over, because I really want to put the kibosh on this whole thing having to do with slices, because I was really getting preoccupied with it, and I was like, I don't want to have to use multi-pointers to get my slice. Like, what is that about? And it really comes down to this notion of pointer arithmetic being obfuscated in Odin through using indexing on slices, right? I think that's really what you're accomplishing anyways underneath the hood. It's just to get this nice indexing syntax versus adding to pointers and stuff the way Casey does it, because there's no slices in C, right? So, my apprehension with using a many item pointer or a multi-pointer here really stems from that, like I've gone on and on about, the fact that you really just want to try and use this when you're having to write C bindings or whatever, and then you take that multi-pointer and convert it to a slice by indexing into it. So keeping that convention in mind, it's not that I'm uncomfortable using them, because I've used multi-pointers all over the Zig code base that I have, where I got, just over 100 days in following Casey and everything. And I was using multi-pointers for all of that because I still wasn't comfortable with slices. And I think part of this is like, it's a classic programmer thing where you discover a new thing and then you just can't stop thinking about everything through the lens of how that thing works. And so I think that just kept hanging me up. But the sort of place I've arrived at the end here through thinking about this over the weekend is that I'm okay with using the multi-pointer if it's to get this data shaped into another way, like going from a 2D array to a slice. And it all kind of feels pointless because I'm pretty sure that 2D array is going to go away and we're just going to use one big long chunk of memory. So, oh, you know what? Fuck. I knew I had forgotten to do something, trying to cram too much into one day, and I forgot to reset my audio moving over to the desktop. Okay, where was I? So, once again, dealing with this data in this way, I was just, hoping that I wouldn't have to use a multi-pointer. But I think I'm okay with it at this point because, I mean, this feature exists in the language, and I've used multi-pointers enough to where I shouldn't really be freaking out this much about it. And what it comes down to is the rule of thumb that I think if I stick to it, we really shouldn't have any problems. And again, like I was just saying before, I realized my audio was probably doing that clicking thing again. The reason why it does that is because I switch between my laptop and my desktop with a bunch of different peripherals here, and I like just being able to switch one cable and then it all switches over. But I actually have to switch two cables if I want my microphone's audio to come through without doing that weird clicking thing. I have to switch the audio interface over, or else it'll do that. So that was just what I forgot to do, unfortunately. But anyways, So I think if I stick to this convention for myself, I should be just fine, which is that if I need to use a multi-pointer, you know, I know what I'm doing, it's fine. And we're using the exact dimensions that we intend to use off the 2D array. And again, I'll say this one last time, we're not going to use the 2D array in the end anyways, but just for the sake of understanding, I need to talk through it all out loud to myself and rubber duck this thing and make sure that this is really sticking. As long as when I use the multi-pointer, and inevitably I wind up with a slice, and I'm not storing a multi-pointer unless I absolutely have to, because I'm, you know, doing a call to C or whatever. Ultimately, I'm not using the multi-pointer to like store something inside of a struct that I'm gonna use everywhere else in my code base. So I think this is just fine. A couple other things that I realized that I just don't need this, right? Like I don't need to get the raw data. Just taking the reference of my different individual tile maps here is fine. That gets me to where I want to go, and then I can slice into that pointer because it gets cast to the multi-pointer. The raw data call, wrapping this in a raw data call just didn't make sense because it's turning that pointer to the 2D array into a raw pointer, but ultimately I'm just casting it to a U32 multi-pointer anyway, so it's just pointless. The other thing that I was trying to figure out why I wasn't crashing on Saturday, because I was indexing into the multi-pointer to get the slice by adding 10 or whatever, and what I realized was that I was just reading the memory, right, after indexing into memory that I shouldn't be touching, right, to store it into that slice. Well, reading that memory is fine. It's when I try to write to it that would cause the crash. So if I were to go ahead and say, you know, change my tile map tiles at, what is this? We decided that the dimensions were 153 or something, but because we're slicing 10 past the end of those bounds that the 2D world map memory should exist in, or I guess this is just the one tile map, so it's not the world, it's just the one tile map. So it's 153 tiles or something like that. We're going 10 past that, so this slice has a length of 10, but for those last 10 elements, because we're indexing past the end of those bounds, if I try and write to that, that's when we'll actually have a crash. If I can use the right variable name. Or maybe not. It could just be that this doesn't crash until you go past, because the compiler is allocating for me, right, the size of the 2D array that it thinks is the most optimal size for it to allocate, even though it's not, it might not line up perfectly. So if I go like 100 elements past and then start trying to write to that, actually this was just wrong. This index was wrong. I was indexing 10 because I just blindly copied the number over that I was indexing past the bounds to. So man, I'm all over the place. But if I actually go, let's say 155, because that is past the bounds, that might crash it. Yeah, it does. Okay. This is what I was trying to make happen on Saturday, and what I just tried to make happen a few moments ago. But, you know, we only allocated 153 when we declared our array. I was saying just a moment ago that maybe it gave us a few elements past the bounds of the 2D tile map that we declared, just because it decided you can have, you know, but that doesn't make sense because it's a fixed width, right? You just, if it was allocating more than that, then we'd be able to stuff more into it, and you can't. If I was to try and do that up here, right, if I put in one more array or added one more to the end of one of these, right, it's going to say that it's out of bounds. So this makes more sense, and this is exactly what I was trying to make happen. But we can actually read this element because it's just going to go into memory and look past the end of, well, actually we can't because this is a slice here now. No, we can. It's just that the slice is giving you a window into some memory that you shouldn't be. So this is just one of those things where it's like, now I can see what the real flaw is here, but as long as I know what I'm doing, and sometimes I think I do, then we're okay. So with all that confusion out of the way, I can go ahead and clean up the rest of these raw data calls, just because they're not necessary, I don't think. This might be necessary, I'm not sure. Yeah, no, this probably isn't. Because this is getting the raw data out of the slice that makes up my game memory's permanent storage. Just that big block of bytes. So that does make sense. See, I have to make this call if I want to get the pointer out of a slice. Although I don't know if you can just, like, I don't think, yeah, you can't just get the pointer field. You can't just access it off of the slice. I've tried to do that multiple times already, and it's never worked out for me. I just realized I haven't refreshed my chat here. I want to make sure I don't miss anything if anybody drops by and wants to say hello. Okay, so now I'm that far. Let me go back to my notes. And oh yeah, the for loop. I was really overthinking the for loop again because my brain was just all sliced up thinking about slices. Over here, I was like, maybe I can take a slice from slice, and I'll just slice all the way down until I've drawn out my tile map, when I can just do this, right? This is the same thing as this right here. And in my head, I was trying to do something crafty where I could get the row out, or rather the row of tiles out, and then the exact tile out while walking the slice. But it's kind of pointless, and we implement this call to get the tile value anyways. So this just, I was trying to, for some reason, my brain defaulted to the C-style for loop, probably just because I've been watching Casey do those for months now. Months and months and months. And so that's just where my brain went, versus just, you know, use this nice little range syntax that Odin gives me, which I've already used several times. It's just, for some reason, my brain didn't go there. Did not bother to open that drawer. And so that's good. So I guess the lesson for me really was just, you know, don't overthink it with trying to be too clever. The other thing too was I was thinking about, well, what if I just use the bounds of the slice to do this check and make sure I'm not accessing a tile or trying to get a tile that I shouldn't. And I just decided to walk that back. It made sense up here just because getting the index of the tile map out of the world, we're only fetching that in one way in one place, and that's right here. Whereas we get the actual tile value in two different ways. We get it here where we've actually done the check outside of here, and then we do it down there in that for loop where we're drawing the tiles out. And then, oh yeah, the type declaration thing. I was looking at, where was that? It was like when I was trying to declare my 2D tile map. Variable here or something like that, and I was like, why can't I just declare my type like this? And the reason why is because it's not how you declare a type in Odin. I've got Zig on my brain, where before I would just say, you know, const my awesome thing equals struct, or, you know, if it was I was trying to, you know, take a look at what it will look like when I start making my own vector types, and I was like, you know, why can't I just do this, I think. And that's, you know, that would be the Zig way of doing it, you know, declaring that vector 3 type or whatever. But in Odin, it would look like this, right? Yeah, and I don't know why. I mean, I've declared stuff all over this code base. It's just I'm still trying to shake all of the all of the Zig stuff out so that I can concentrate on Odin, but it's hard. Got a lot of ducks to keep in a row. And what are you complaining about now? Oh, because I did this. And we don't want to actually instantiate it. Well, we don't want to assign it to the type. So this would be like the same thing as this, right? But we don't need to do that. We can just do this because you know, Odin's nice and it zeroes it out for us. So there we go. And then in the Q&A for, what was that, day 29, Casey goes over this aspect of the way the collision detection is working so far, which you can see there's like a little spot there where we can't move into. There's this little gap between the rectangle and the wall, and that is just because the collision detection that we've implemented essentially is not as good at detecting collisions, because it's just the simplest thing that we could possibly do, right? Like next, the reason why it's leaving that gap in there is because the delta that we are calculating on every frame as we try and move over to the left is too big, and so this is just as far as the character can go, as far as how the program is written can tell. But if we wanted to, and eventually we do start working on that stuff down the line, right? So that was really the only thing of interest. It was otherwise a pretty, you know, routine Q&A. Lots of different questions about things that made me glad to kind of cut that part out of the stream, right? Because I want to focus on the programming aspect when we're actually live here. So that's all I got. Hey, Carlos. So just want to make sure the stream hasn't died on me. And I think we're good. I think we can go ahead and jump in here. Almost 20 minutes in, and I can finally start writing some new code. But what I did decide to do over here is move Casey down into the left, just because it was taking up what felt like way too much of the screen between my camera and then him, and there's no way you can see anything he's doing when I'm on this scene anyways. So with all of that being said, we can finally move on and just trust that, you know, I've got a decent enough intuition about how slices work and what they're good for and why I should try and use them wherever I can, and not, you know, second guess myself anymore. So moving on.
Anyway, welcome to Handmade Hero, everyone. This is, of course, a show where we make an entire game from scratch using nothing but our bare hands, no libraries, no engine, and we are basically doing this because I really think there's something valuable to everyone who's a serious game programmer going through the entire pipeline of a game from start to finish sometime, just so they can see every last little thing that goes on in a sort of the full stack of a game, and just understanding every last little thing that happens. I think it's great for educational purposes. I think it makes you more powerful when you do professional programming. I think it allows you to be the kind of guy who works on an engine team. It allows you to be someone who can overcome limitations of the tools that they work with. It's very empowering to know how everything works, and that is exactly what we are doing. We are taking it slow and investigating every last little aspect of game programming as it comes up. We are at the point where we have made our Win32 prototyping layer, and we are building our game on top of it right now. What we are doing this week is we have sort of been trying to imagine roughly what are the sorts of things our game is going to have to do so that we can start building our engine. And one of the things that I said early on is, in order to build a game engine, you need a game, and in order to build a game, you need a game engine, right? It's kind of this sort of thing. Because if you've never built a game before, you won't know what to put in your game engine. You won't know how to structure it and architect it correctly so that it's not just a pain in the butt to use. And similarly, if you don't have a game engine, you can't really make a game, because the game engine is the thing that provides all the services. It's the thing that puts graphics up on the screen. It's the thing that loads the art. It's the thing that plays the sounds and the music and everything. So how do you make a game with it? And so basically, we're in a chicken and egg scenario, if you will, when you're making everything from scratch. And so what you want to do is you want to use what I call exploration programming, right? You want to kind of start to just play around with making the game and the engine together. You just want to kind of play around with test code so that you can start to see what things should look like. And then once you kind of get a sense of what a certain part looks like, then you can sort of go, oh, let me go make some code here that'll start to be the basis of the engine in this part, and so on. And so that's what we're really doing today. We're kind of continuing on our exploration, just trying to get stuff on the screen, make stuff work. We're not caring about code quality. We're not caring about cleanliness or any other abstract concepts. We're just talking about, let's just write some code that does some gamey stuff, and let's see what it looks like so that we can start to pull the sort of the common pieces out of it and pull the structure out of it that we're going to need in order to make a game engine that will allow us to do nice, fast game development and do all the things that we would want to do if we were to license an engine or do something like that. We want to make that component right there. So this will start to educate us to make that design look really good. So if you are...
And I was really just veering off there in those last couple streams, because I'm getting, like, I know enough to be very dangerous with the code that I'm writing now, because I'm like looking for all these places like, ooh, can I do something cool over here? Can Odin let me do something neat over here? And when I should really just, keep carving forward. And those moments will come, especially once there's actually more of a real game in place and I can start to do more custom things, just chasing an idea and going off and going after it. But there's a long way to go from where we're at now to that place.
Following along at home and you have pre-ordered the source code on handmadehero.org, with the little pre-order button here, you should have gotten an email. That email has a link that allows you to download a zip file. Inside the zip file, there are zips of every day. We are on day 30, so you want to unzip day 29, yesterday's work, because that is what I'm starting with today. And so if you unzip day 29 into a directory and start working with that, you'll be exactly where I am right now. And where am I right now is a good question. I am going to run the game so you can see what we were doing. So what we were doing is we were playing with a tile map. We were basically saying, okay, we've got this little tile map here. You can see we put in some walls, we put in some doors. We have a little dude who moves around. We have it so he cannot move through these various pieces, right? And so again, and what we decided to do was just use rectangles for everything because we didn't want to deal with bitmaps yet until we saw how we wanted to use them. So pretty straightforward stuff, nothing really particularly strange, but we've got it all going. And so what we were trying to do yesterday and what we want to finish up today is we'd like to be able to walk out of the tile map and onto another tile map, right? We want to be able to walk from one screen to another and have the map update properly. So that is what we are doing, and if I remember correctly, we had gotten partway through it, but we ran out of time on the stream to finish it up. So let's go ahead and take a look at where we actually were. I'm going to go ahead and move it over here. Okay, so what we had done is we wrote inside our game update and render call, right? We're basically just spamming all of our code straight on in here. We actually just made some little arrays that represent the tile maps that we wanted to traverse. We made an array, a 2x2 array of those tile maps, and we assigned various tile maps to them. Of course, you notice we didn't, got some nice typos in there. These are supposed to be actually assigned to each of these things individually, I believe, which wasn't. Oh wait, no, never mind, that's not a typo, that's correct. That was basically cloning this initial stuff here. So basically what we had is these were the variables that we found we needed to compute where the guy was in the tile map and to draw the tile map, so we pulled those out into tile map structure. Then we realized we needed multiple tile maps, so we made a world structure. We made a tile map count X and a tile map count Y with a pointer to the tile maps, right? We haven't made it sparse yet, it's actually dense, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but basically what happens is we assigned everything to our world. We have our world pointer sort of worked out here, but we never actually did anything with it. We're still doing all of our work. We just kind of grabbed tile map, in fact right here you can kind of see, if I can pile, we grabbed tile map 0, 0, the base tile map that's in the first position of that array, and we do all of our work with it, right? You can see we do tile map, tile map, tile map, tile map, tile map, all that sort of stuff, right? Nothing particularly interesting going on there. So what I want to do here is the player width and height, that actually should be moved kind of up here, and this should kind of be referencing off of this thing, because we have some constant variables here. Again, just taking it one step at a time, there's a lot of stuff we're going to want to do to clean all of this up. I mean, this is literally just spamming the code out here, but I'm just making little
baby steps. Don't be too hasty. Just do the thing that you need to do. So player width and height, like you said, move it up here, throw it under that initial tile maps initialization. Well, of course, we need to... I see. Well, I kind of liked that I didn't have to access that first element off of the tile maps, but I'll just do it the way he's doing it for posterity. And then we just start, converting those other tile maps over to the slices. And actually he does like this part down below declaration of the width and height, but I think it's fine where it is. Then we have our world, and he's actually putting that up above here. And yeah, I think we're on the same page now.
Steps to kind of put things into the right place slowly, and over time it'll accrete. And again, a lot of this is not, I'm not even saying, so a lot of this stuff I wouldn't be doing because I just know the right answers to some of this stuff. So I could just sort of type it in, but if I didn't already know what some of the right answers are, this is not like messy code I'm just doing for the stream. This is actually how I recommend you do it. I recommend you type in awful code first. That's whatever the first thing you think of to get stuff up on the screen is. And then afterwards, when you're satisfied it does the basic operations that it needs to do, only then go through and clean it up. Because otherwise you're spending a lot of time thinking about how to make the code clean, but you haven't actually figured out which code you actually need to make clean yet. And so you end up going through all of these cascades of writing some clean code and spending a bunch of time fussing with that, only to realize that it doesn't do some of the operations you actually needed it to do. And so I can't stress enough how I really do not think it's a good practice to write clean code when you are just exploring things. Write messy code and then write the clean code only once, so that you save that effort of writing clean code only to when it actually is going to pay off.
It's like he's slapping me over the head with the trap I was starting to fall into. I was in that perfect, like, oh, I've written a little bit of game code today. You know, at this point, I've done it for a few months now, and I can, you know, just start going off and doing my own thing. No, just let it happen as it happens. Don't get too adventurous and try and cut corners to what you think you're going to need to do. There's a long road to go yet.
Because code like this, that's just transient and just that we're playing around with, isn't going to stay around. So any time you spent making it clean was full-on wasted. You basically just took if you believe time is money, you just held up a bunch of Benjamins, if you will, as they say in the States, as the kids today say, and then you light them on fire. And that's no good. All right, so.
It's true.
What I'd like to do is start to get us working so that we start to think about where we are in this tile map space. So you'll notice that we had sort of a concept of where the player was, and this notion of where the player was is sort of inside one tile map. This is where they are inside the tile map. But what I need to do, and we wrote this function already yesterday, there was a function that says get a tile map from a tile map x and a tile map y. And that tile map x and y are basically sort of indices into an array of tile maps to say which tile map we're in, and then the player x and y tells us where we are inside that tile map. So what I need to do is I basically need to do a player tile map x and a player tile map y, right? To sort of say, here is the tile map the player's in, and then here's where they are inside the tile map, right? So that's something that I need to do. And then what I can do is when we are actually operating on the tile maps here, I could start to say, all right, which tile map are we going to operate on here in the game loop? Well, we're going to operate on whichever one player tile map x, right? Game state player tile map y. We're going to operate on whichever one we were actually looking at, that we actually remember the player to be in. Now, if I remember correctly, like I said, we wrote that function that will actually retrieve it for us and actually does bounds checking, right? Which is get tile map, and you pass it the tile map x and tile map y. So what I can do here is I can actually use that query function, right? I can actually use that query function to do the query for us, which is good because I typed that in wrong. I typed it in backwards there. The y comes first and the x comes second.
That's what I thought.
As I was just doing on stream. So this is actually much better because x, usually we think of x as coming first and y as coming second, but in C, because we tend to store things in order of x's first and then y's, it ends up being backwards. It looks like that when you access an array. So I kind of like to have accessors because then I can always pass my x first and my y second, and then I can throw bounds checking in there if I want to. So this is just strictly better in my opinion. So
Bounds checking. There it is yet again. It'll come up over and over and over for as long as I shall live and write code. So we're going to do this, and we're going to pass in, well, the world, right? Instead of getting the tile map off of the tile maps, like the actual, you know, 2D array there of tile maps, and then we pass both of these in. I'm definitely at that point in the day where I've just been staring at a screen for too long, and I'm feeling just a bit stretched out, stretched thin. What is this complaining about? Duh, we need a pointer. And now what is it complaining about? Game state is undeclared. Well, that is a big problem. Yeah, he's about to run into that issue too. Where's he going to put it?
I'm going to stick with that. All right, so I'm going to get the tile map out there, and then if I guess what we want to do here is also assert that he's always on a tile map for now, because we should never allow the player to be in some location that doesn't actually have a tile map associated with it. So for now, let's just say that that's true. Okay, so we need to do that. We've got that game state that has to go after initialization because we haven't initialized the game state yet at that point. So there we go, and now we should still be on the same.
Wait, where did he put it? I missed it.
Point.
Okay. Yeah, he just takes all of this and then throws it up above here. Well, after the tile maps are assigned to the world. Yeah, after we instantiate the world, we get the game state out, and then we get our tile map, and we're good. And actually, this was fine because we actually just call that proc that we wrote last time. Now we've got a tile map, and it should work. Unless you fail to get your tile map out, which I did. So what's the problem? That tile map index, well, we're not setting... Is because I didn't... Wait a minute. Okay. This is because the... Well, the player tile map X and Y should be 0, which means we should start out on 0, 0. So what's up with that? We pass in 0, 0. Huh. Well, I guess we can just wait and see if Casey's code blows up. And if it does, then I'm not alone.
So there we go. And now we should still be on the same screen, which we are.
I'm alone. Okay, great. This is too wide. It's just upsetting how wide the code is. So I'm just going to break that up. Lovely verbose names. So we give the world the tile maps, and we're indexing to get that slice correctly. So we shall debug. What is this tile map index coming out to? I guess is what I should figure out. My stomach is not happy. I effectively skipped lunch today because things wound up being so busy. And I was like, do I want to eat or do I want to stream? Well, easy choice. That's not true. I had a snack. The index is 0, so... Oh, is it because this check is just wrong? Yeah, that's all it is. And now I'm not using format, so... Away you go again until I decide to bring you back permanently. And now we're good. Okay. That wasn't too bad. I don't know why that happened. And I mean, it really happened because I decided to write some of my own code. You know, I could have just checked the tile map X and Y. Oh, this is actually wrong still. This should be tile map Y. Caught another bug there. Again, because I'm writing my own code and it's just blowing up before my eyes. Why didn't you just copy him verbatim? You would have suffered so much less pain. But then I wouldn't learn as much, right? That's the whole point of doing it myself. You can watch somebody do this stuff all day, but if you don't do it yourself, you're not going to learn much. Yes, I do not know how to pronounce that name. RCRNSTN. So, Rickerin. Yeah, no, I'm just gonna call you R until you designate yourself a different name. But yeah, that was definitely a typo. In addition to the fact that I wasn't checking this properly, right? But this was like, if I go down here to, well, actually, this isn't greater than or equal to either. So, and he was just looking at that function. So, yeah, okay, yeah, he definitely puts greater than or equal to, which means that this is bad. And I just wasn't seeing a bug because we start off 150 by 150 into the tile map, right? So that's why I didn't catch that. Okay, real great. There's no good way to do it. Okay, Mr. R it is. Let's carry on.
The tile map out there, and then if I guess what we want to do here is also assert that he's always on a tile map for now, because we should never allow the player to be in some location that doesn't actually have a tile map associated with it. So for now, let's just say that that's true. Okay, so we need to do that. We've got that yet at that point. So there we go, and now we should still be on the same screen, which
There
we
we
are.
go.
So really all we need to do now is start thinking about moving the player when they would go off of here. And we also have to do some other things, which is that right now, when it looks off that tile map, we're not actually looking onto another tile map, because if you remember, we wrote the code to do sort of our stopping us when we hit a wall. What that's basically doing is it's looking where the player would be on the next frame, and it's saying, is the location where the player would be on the next frame of the tile map empty or not? Well, when we get to here, and it reads, and it looks over onto sort of a no man's land, we assumed that if you were accessing off the tile map, the tile map that you're currently on, if you were to look outside of it, either on the left, the right, the top, or the bottom, we just assumed it to be filled. What we need to do now is start assuming that it's not filled, assuming that it's actually could be another tile map that we have to look at and see what the actual value is, right? And so if we go through here and take a look at that is tile map point empty thing, right? That is tile map point empty. What we want to do here is allow that function, right, to start looking across multiple tile maps, okay? And so what we want to do is start saying, well, there's probably the equivalent here of something like, you know, this sort of thing, where it's like, there's an is tile map point empty, which is the function that we had before, and then there's maybe something like a is world point empty, which is actually going to take a world location, right? I'm sorry, a world struct so that it can access multiple tile maps, and maybe that thing will actually take something more like this. So it's going to take the tile map x and the tile map y, and then it's going to take the test, or sorry, I should say test tile map x, test tile map y, and then it's going to take that test x, text y.
Oh, we are going off the screen here for sure. Let's go ahead and break this up. Make that, and they're all tests. It's so verbose, and I can appreciate verbosity. I really can, but whatever. I shouldn't question. I shouldn't question his ways. I should just learn. Just try and learn. It's like the whole wax on, wax off thing. Just do it. Eventually, you'll earn the ability to use less verbose names.
Right. And I'm just doing this speculatively because we don't actually know what this function wants to do. We probably want to preserve this guy here, who's actually doing our testing inside one tile map, but let's just take a look at what we might want to do here. So the test tile map x and the test tile map y, well, this test x, test y, essentially what can happen is if those were going to be outside the boundary, right? If you think about what happens here, if the player tile x and the player tile y, if they were outside the boundary, what we were doing is we were just using this if statement to prevent us from ever doing anything in the cases where they were. But what we could do instead is just start looking at what happens, right? We could say if the player tile x was less than 0, instead of like preventing it from looking. If the player tile x was less than 0.
Whoa. What did I do here? I have two. Okay. So he did function overloading, if I can talk right. And so now we have these two is world point empty calls, but we can't do that in Odin. So I'm gonna have to think outside the box here and actually have to do something original, because, you know, I had to do the same thing as Zig and I don't remember what I did to differentiate these two. But does he not realize that he already defined it? Maybe that's... I'm just going to see where he goes with this. Hey, Nutella. What's up?
What we could say is we could say, okay, let's actually change what we were looking at. Let's assume that if it's less than 0, we're going to map it into the next tile map's space, the next tile map over, right? So you can picture what this is doing, right? Here's our lovely diagram from yesterday. My art is always unrivaled, as you know. So if I have a tile map here, right, and I have some tile map next to it, right? Previously, what we were doing is we were figuring out where in this tile map you were, and maybe, you know, you walked off the left edge, so it's -1 or something, right? And so if it was -1, we just assumed it's blocked. That's what we were assuming. What we'd like to do instead is ask the next tile map before us what he had in his rightmost column, right? So if a tile map was n things wide, right, and they're numbered 0 through n-1, as we do in C, when we look at the -1 of this guy, when we look at -1, what we sort of want to do is say, okay, -1 is going to map to n-1 on the previous tile map, and -2 is going to map to n-2 on the previous tile map, right? So it's basically, it's n, however big n is, minus, right, whatever our actual x value is that we computed here, right? It's this value minus whatever the width of a tile map is in tiles, is the actual column that we'd want to look into, right? So you can imagine, it's basically the new tile x is just whatever that width is minus the player tile x, right? If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. But like we said, it's going to be negative, so it just becomes, I'm not explaining this very well, and I apologize for that. Hopefully this made some sense. Basically what I'm saying is, we know this number is already negative. We know that we got a negative number because this is the 0th tile of our map, and we got a negative number here. So the player tile x is already negative, so I don't need to do n minus x. I'm really doing n plus the x, because the x is negative, right? I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes some sense. So what I want to do here is I want to just take whatever the tile map was beforehand, I want to take that tile map with this count x, right? However many tiles there are in a tile map, and I want to go ahead and add the player tile x to it. That is the actual player tile x I would look up into in the previous tile map. But of course, I have to actually get whatever that tile map actually was, because it's a different tile map now. So the tile map that I'm actually going to be looking at, again, is test tile map x. So what I want to do is say, all right, that test tile map x is now one before where it was. So I'm moving to the previous tile map, I'm correcting what the player tile x is, and off we go.
Okay, well, I can already see a few problems with the way that we're going to try and do this. What time is it? Okay. I think I'm making okay time. I don't care how long the stream goes. It's just there's a point in the day where I just need to be done with computers and programming, because it's the only way to live properly and in prosperity. So the first thing, well, he's calling these, okay, so we calculate the new player tile x, right? Or the one that we're trying to go to. Based off of this calculation, this is where we're going to wind up. And we're going to ask ourselves, well, I see. So if we're going to go negative, that means we're moving to the previous tile map. That's what he just explained. So player tile x would then be the count on the tile map now plus, how does this math work out? So we go negative, and then I see, yeah, because then we're going back the number of tiles into the previous tile map from the whole width of a single tile map. That makes sense. So we take this, add player tile x, and this is just going to push us back into that previous tile map. And also, we're going to say, well, we can't, so what I was driving at a few seconds ago, the problem that we're going to run into is that he can modify his procedure parameters in C, but I can't do that in Odin. So I'm going to have to specify a new test tile map x and y, even more verbose. Screw it, we're going all in. The more verbose, the better. I guess we can just start off assigning these to, you know, their respective values, and I think that'll be fine, because if they're not going to change, they're not going to change, but if they are going to change, we need to be able to modify them. Minus equals 1. And we also can't do that minus minus operator in Odin, right? It just does not exist. And they do this nice thing where they tell you, you know, even the language server can tell me that that statement is not supported, which is fine by me. I've never really cared all that much one way or the other. It means different things depending on the language I'm using, so I've just never, I don't know, like if I'm writing Elixir, I can use the plus plus operator to combine two strings or two lists, as the case may be. So like that's when I'm in Elixir, that's just where my brain goes. I don't care. If it's available to me, I'll use it. If it's not, whatever. And then we do the same thing with player tile Y. And I think I'm caught up. I'm actually a little bit ahead of him now. Mr. R, thank you again for your contributions. I just wasn't even paying attention to what I was writing while I was going off about different operators, and I missed that. I mean, I would have seen it when I compiled, but still. I appreciate you looking out for me. Is he technically using C++? C doesn't have function overloading. Yeah, so he is using C++, but it's a C-flavored C++ because he likes function overloading, and he likes operator overloading. And there might be a couple other aspects of C++ that he likes, but it's mainly those two. And he'll bring it up from time to time and pointing out why he likes to use them. And he thinks they're good features. But, you know, we're in Odin, so I don't have function overloading, and I'm pretty sure there's no operator overloading. Well, I know there's no operator overloading in Odin. But that's fine because the things that you would go to use operator and function overloading for in C++, Odin gives us a lot of nice stuff out of the box, which I'm looking forward to using once we get that far. But we're still not even using vectors, so I have to, you know, do things not with vectors for the time being. So let's keep going.
Exact same thing would work for Y, right? The exact same thing would work if we were one off the bottom. We'd move to the previous tile map in Y, and we'd query this tile on it, right? Now, one thing you may notice is this tile map here, we don't actually know what tile map we're looking at yet. And so what we would have to do if we wanted to do this where each tile map was a different size, we'd have to do...
Actually, no, that, just pointing something out here. I guess the compiler wouldn't have caught this bug that I just introduced here, because it would have just assigned it to -1, and then it would have... Yeah, it might have been painful to figure that one out. So you might have just saved me a lot of headache later on.
A ton of different map here because we'd have to also have other information. Like, let's say the tile maps were different sizes, right? So here's the one we're on, and here's a different one. Well, now the map is more complicated because if we move over here, we'd also have a different Y offset than we used to have because the top is up here. So the Y offset for this may be 0, but the Y offset for this may be like 7 or something, right? But since all of our tile maps are supposed to be the same size and they're tiled like this, we don't actually have to do that. Which brings up the thing we talked about.
Unless Odin doesn't have unary minus, but that would be real weird. I mean, I guess I assumed something totally different in that I just thought it would assign it to -1. I mean, we can check. Oh, this is just complaining because now I have 2 procs named the same thing, which we'll see. He might not have meant to redeclare it, so... And I'm not even calling it. Yeah, I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know what happened with that, but I don't know that I necessarily care to find out either. And I just undid. That correction. Whoops. Okay.
Yesterday, and again I said don't do things until you actually have to do them, until you actually see, and that's exactly what I want to talk about now. These values that are accessed off the tile map are actually constant for all the tile maps. We don't allow tile maps to be multiple sizes yet, and I don't ever anticipate allowing you to do that because since we allow you to have as many tile maps as you want, the only thing that would do is we would have it so that basically we would zoom in or out, so there would be times when we would be seeing your guy a lot smaller because there'd be a lot more tiles on like one screen or something. And that is not something that I plan on enabling in this game at all. So what I want to do is say these values are actually constant, right? All of this stuff is actually not a property of the tile map at all. It's a property of the world, right? And we could actually...
Yeah. Because it doesn't... He's right, it doesn't make sense to have those all share the same property if it's all going to be the same value. So we can move all of that except for the tiles, which now it just feels a bit pointless for this to be its own struct, really. But whatever, I'm just going to roll with it. And now I can move this up here, because those are also ints. Just try and group all the types, or all the members together by their type. I don't know if I really find it all that helpful. It is nice to not have to write the same type out. What is that? 6 different times. So I guess there's that. I missed this. What's good, Rockstar? I'm trying, man. I'm so far. I feel like I'm fumbling, you know, really hard to get the fingerings for the chords right now. It's felt like that the whole time, but We'll get there.
Have you go between multiple worlds, let's say, we could make this something else, which is like a series of tile maps that are the same size or something like that. We could rename this. But like I said, I want a fairly consistent space, so I want the player to always be seeing a screen that's a certain number of tiles width and height, and that they walk around and it's always consistent. So I think that's fairly safe to say. So what I want to do is move that out to the world, so that what you're really doing all the time is you're really looking at the world to know these things that you were previously looking basically at the tile map to know, right? So these should all...
I might as well just fix all of those errors that I will surely have. What is going on here? What is that about? What? Line 428. Row is not declared. Is it just because I've got so many errors up here that, yeah, we can't even... Right. So just rip all of that out and put it in the world, right? But of course, this means we've got to move the world declaration up. I'm not sure where we want to move it. I guess I'll look to see where he throws it eventually, but I can just do that, right? Yeah. And that looks good. Anywhere else? Well, I guess it's not going to be count X and Y anymore. I mean, that's... It'll probably be like tile count, because that's a little bit more expressive of what's going on there. And then same thing with this. We're going to pull the tile width and height off of the world. Same thing for... This is making me wish that I did not do all this manually. Every single time I make a correction, I just get barked at more by OLS. We got some more stuff further down or somewhere else in some other proc call, I'm guessing. Tile map point. Because we probably... Yeah, I think we're just going to wipe this proc out and replace it with the world point. Is world point empty proc. So I'll just let him get there because he needs to go there still.
Will be world-based stuff, right? World. So when we do this, when we walk off the end like that, we're going to take a look and we're going to say, okay, if we moved off the end, we readjust which tile we're looking at in here. And the same.
In fact, I didn't even bother to change all of this stuff inside of this proc. So where else am I using tile? It's all calls off of the tile map. So we can just pull all of that out. Replace it with world, right? I did something wrong here. Oh, it's because I didn't add in the substitution thing. Is that right? Oh, our world is undeclared. That's embarrassing. Did I just neglect to do that, or did he? Yeah, he passed the world in there. I don't know how I missed that. And then this, I'm just gonna re-comment out so I don't confuse myself. Okay. We still got some problems. Probably because this proc is just bad now, but getting a little ahead of myself. Smoke on the water real soon. Oh man. That would be like, I don't know what that would be, but it's not this. What I'm trying to do, this is like starting out and probably trying to learn like, I don't know, just pick a random Dream Theater song. Like this is how I'm going to start learning guitar. I'm just going to learn, you know, not just any Dream Theater song, but whatever, you know, a guitar nerd would consider one of their hardest songs to be. I really don't know their catalog all that well.
Has to go, the exact same thing has to go for if we were going to walk sort of past the right edge as well. So this thing right here that we were checking before, that also has to happen. Excuse me. So if we were to walk off that right edge, same basic idea. What we need to do is say, all right, let's go to the next tile map over, right? And when we go to the next tile over, we're looking at this situation. We were here, we stepped to here. If this is n minus 1, right, which is that count number, it's count x. If this is count x minus 1, we're then going to be on count x. We're then going to be on n. And what we really want to be on is we want to be on 0, right? We want to basically subtract out the count and just get how far we are away from that boundary, which will tell us where we are on the next tile map, right? So all we want to really do here is just say, okay, whatever that player tile x was, that we had was, we want to just subtract out the world count x, right? There you go. And the same is true for y again. There we go.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm like understanding what it is he's actually doing from like the math perspective. Like if we go, whereas before I was just like, whatever you say, man. Yeah, we're on the next tile map. It's magic numbers, but it makes sense if we go past the width of a single tile map, and we're actually able to go there because there's another tile map over there. Then we can step one tile into it, but that means that our new player tile X, we're restarting on the first tile of that new tile map that we're jumping to. So this is just minus, right? I'm on the wrong thing. There we go. And then same thing for the Y, and over here should be world count Y. And this is going to be plus equals 1.
Let's see, x and y. So all I'm doing here is saying if we step out the bounds, let's reduce it and go to the next one over. And this is basically the equivalent of this clipping that we used to be doing, but instead of actually just clipping and assuming, we're actually going to just look at the next tile map if we have to. So once we do that work, we can then say, let's get the tile map, whatever the actual tile map is here, using get tile map. We've now computed which tile map we actually want, right? So this is the tile map that we actually want. So let's go ahead and query it. We say, ask that function that looks up tile maps. We know that the player has moved, or the position we're looking up, I guess. This is, instead of player tile x, this is really test tile x, right? So the tile that we're testing here, we're going to ask for the tile map that corresponds to the place that we were asked to look.
Oh God, yeah. I didn't even catch that because this is looking at. Oh, okay, yeah. No, I caught that. I didn't really feel great about the name either. But I was just kind of going with it. But yeah, so this isn't officially the new player tile until we've decided that it's okay, and we test it to make sure that that's the correct tile we want to go to. So test tile X and Y, but that means we got to change all of this to test tile X and Y. And I wasn't even done writing this, so test tile X, test tile Y. And same thing over here. I'll just, all of this right here. Replace that. Cool.
Right, adjusted by, if we were out of bounds, adjusted one in any one of the 4 directions. We're then going to say, we get that tile map back, and we go ahead and...
I don't know why I call this new. Yes, okay, yeah, no, I do. I forgot that I had done that, however long ago that was, 10 minutes, because again, we can't change these directly, or the Odin compiler will bark at us. So we have to make these the new test tile map X and Y. So that was just, I'm plugging in the wrong stuff there. And we're getting pretty wide again, but whatever. I guess I'll just let it go. It didn't bother me over here, apparently.
Say, let's ask if that point is empty. Now, what I'd like to do is, since this function can fail, like we could be asking for a tile that's out of bounds. Since that function can fail, what I'd also like to do is I'd like to go ahead and make this function guarded. I'd like to say that when you call this function, it's going to go ahead and check the tile map to see if that tile map is 0 or not. If it is 0, it's just going to assume that the tile was not empty. It's going to assume that there was something there and that it's blocking, right? And so that way we can call this function even if we fetched out of bounds, it doesn't actually matter, right? And then...
Okay. I see. So he's going to get the tile map out with this proc call. And then, whoa, what have I done? If we then ask if that point in the tile map that we now have is empty, instead of doing this, I guess, we're going to Do we even need to pass in? Well, we're going to have to pass the world in because we don't have any of that information. So might as well throw it in there, even if he's not doing it yet. Oh my gosh. Spelling things. It's so hard. What now? Test map. Test map. Tile map. Yeah, I can't even write out the thing that I mean to write. And too many arguments, that's fine, because we got to change that. And then, yeah, is tile map point empty? Is he going to assign it? Or is he just going to return the result of that call?
Okay. We are going to ask our test X and test Y. So what we need to do now oh, wait. But we already have the tile value. So what we actually need here, right, yeah, okay. So we don't actually need this code anymore. What we actually need to do is just pass this straight up, the test X and test Y that we've already computed, right? We've already computed the index into the tile map itself. So we're going to go ahead and just pass that directly, right? Test tile, test tile.
I don't know how I didn't catch that. We don't even, it's test tile X, not test X. We don't have any test X or test Y. And we still got too many variables, but again, I think he has to pass in the world there.
There we go. And so this is tile map point empty. We'll actually just take the X and the Y, and it will not have to do that. So this is test tile X and test tile Y. There we go. So player with test Okay.
I see. He's using those names because that was just what these parameters were named up here. So wide. I don't feel like splitting things up. I always feel weird splitting up arithmetic like this. I don't know why. There's just something about it that feels wrong. I just want my arithmetic to all be on the same line always. Gosh, my stomach will not shut up. Just trying to sanity check myself here, because this now looks different from what he has, because he pulled some stuff out. And then, yeah, so he's still got these, he still has this guard here on the dimensions of the tile map, but those live on the world. So if we're going to keep that check there, then we have to have it. But this, so he added this in where we make sure that the tile map is not nil. And that way that neatly, you know, just says, hey, if there's no tile map over there, then you don't have to worry about it. It's definitely empty because there's nothing there. I see. So he took this out because we're no longer even calculating it. Okay, that's right. I did see him rip that out. And then instead of these player tile values, again, those are now test tile. So yeah, that just leaves getting the tile map dimensions off of that world. I have one arg extra. Yeah, I do, but I think that Casey is going to have to add that. He's going to have to add the world pointer here. And I'll just break this up, because we just keep getting wider. You know, the wider your code is, the better of a programmer you are. That's exactly how that works out. And also, I knew a manager once who actually would send out a letter to the rest of engineering every quarter or something like that, praising people who had the most commits. Like, he actually tried to make it a formal thing And I remember getting like the most commits in a quarter once and being like, this means nothing. You know what that means? It means that I screwed up so many times that I had to make a change for every failure that I made that quarter to write the right code the first time. And I had to push that out over and over again until I got the result I wanted. That's all that meant. Had nothing to do with how quality of a programmer I was. Anyway, all of that aside. So yeah, this is why we need that world, right? But maybe he's going to do this differently. I don't know. Now it's telling me I can't compare it. So what have I done? Cannot assign tile map type to world and procedure argument. Oh, is it because I've got... Well, that's not even this error that I'm getting. What is this error that you are complaining about? Okay. Why? 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 Now it's not complaining about an error. I have no idea. There it is. Okay. What? Okay, so it's just complaining that... Yeah. You're mad that these are two different types. How did this happen? Count X and count Y shouldn't have changed types between... Huh. Okay, I'm just gonna let Casey move forward here and and we'll see. Are you the math line breaking? Maybe indent the second line to match up with math.trunk because the int cast on the first line is not at the same parenthesis level. Yeah, I mean, we could do that. You're talking about... where did that go? Well, I mean, I just ripped that code out, right? But you were talking about this right here. And yeah, maybe that is better. And that's kind of sticking in line with the idea that, you know, wherever you have an opening paren, whenever you do a line break, you want that next line to kind of match up with the first param being passed to that proc. Almost as if, like, another way to think about it would be like this, and that would make it more explicit. And then this wouldn't, you know, there's just something about seeing that line up after the opening paren. But anyway, it's kind of a moot point just because we did rip that out. Of course, now I have to fix this again. I don't know what's going on with the count X and Y not being the right type, because they were before. Like, this proc had to work at one point, didn't it? And count X and Y were an int then, so I can't make sense of that.
So, where did that go? Oh, jump back to where the search started. There we go. So, what we want to do here is we basically want to also probably assert these sorts of things. I would probably say let's go ahead and assert basically the same things that are happening in our checked path. Let's go ahead and assert those.
Okay, so he's just going to take this conditional out. And now it's checked, though, right? Because... And again, these have to come off of the world. Maybe I just totally did something wrong when I pulled that off of the tile map. Maybe these were F32s. No, they were ints. That's bizarre, man. How did that check ever work then? If those types were incompatible. I just do not get that. So if we assert here that our bounds are correct, stomach is getting nice and angry at me. Again, I mean, I had a good breakfast. I didn't have like a full lunch, but I did have, you know, like a bowl of cereal, just something quick to get me to dinner time, and my stomach's just not having it. Probably has something to do with how much caffeine I've sucked down today because, you know, Mondays and starting the week off. And today was just, again, I can't believe how much stuff wound up coming up today that, you know, not a great, I'm in two minds about it, because on the one hand, I don't want to start off my week with a whole bunch of crap that's being slung at me. On the other hand, it's kind of good to start off strong and get a lot done. And I did get a lot done today, but man, it just burns me out by the time the stream rolls around. It's not how I want to go. It's not how I want to do it. So this is going to be fine once we replace, again, this with the world, count X and Y. And is that all he does there? Well, up here, yeah, here might be a good opportunity to like actually calculate the index off of the test tile X and Y. And then we can just assert that one index into the one-dimensional slice is within the bounds of the slice, because it's all the same anyways. And then, yeah, we could basically pull that out. Yeah, I think that'll actually be nice, and I don't see a good reason why we couldn't do that. Basically the same way I'm doing it here. Just calculate that value, and then it's very concrete what this math is doing. It's giving you an index into the tile maps. Same thing here, it'll give us an index into the tiles in the tile map.
This should probably be tile X, tile Y. Okay, all right. Getting closer.
Yeah, you can see that wall of compiler errors telling him you've got a whole lot of things that are not quite lining up here. So I'm just gonna, well, oh God, that was not what I was trying to do at all. Tile map. Yeah, so that's still wrong. That makes sense. That's still wrong. That makes sense. So we'll just let Casey work through this massive list of compiler errors and see how it goes. In the real world, people would slap me for bike shedding this much. You don't have that option as a streamer, but feel free to ignore it. No, I mean, I part of the reason why I started this channel, right, was to start having a dialogue with programmers outside of my own circle. You know, because I think when you just spend so much time thinking through things in one direction, right, you now are discounting all these other ideas that aren't your own. And that's what's been so refreshing about learning first Zig and then Odin, right? I'm getting a lot of value out of trying these different languages. And it's funny because I was just watching this podcast. I brought it up a few times now that Casey was on like a month ago or something, and he pointed out that for him personally that he would not get a whole lot of value out of trying different languages, but I think that's partially because he's been writing in C and C++ for so long that he just has a very good intuitive understanding of what's going on at the hardware level, and I've been missing that understanding. But trying out Zig and Odin has been filling in those gaps, in addition to the fact that I'm translating it from C, so I'm not just rote copying what he's doing. I'm having to think through, okay, what is the actual thing that's being done here? So let's write the code to actually do the thing, and it's going to look a little bit different just because it's in Odin. And then there are ways of doing things in Odin that just make things a little bit nicer than it would be to do them in C. I've been, for a long time, I was stuck in just one lane, one kind of domain of programming, and one way of looking at things through my web dev and data addled brain, you know. And when I say data, I mean specifically like of the SQL kind, relational databases and JSON, blob stuff. Like that's just where my brain has been for too long, and I needed to expose myself to new things. In addition to just, you know, I've always wanted to try games programming in earnest, and for a long time I felt like there's no way I'll be able to make time to actually go down that road. And then I thought, what the hell, you know, there's plenty of time. I just have to make that time. You know, there's no excuse. If you really want to do something, you'll make time to do it. And so yeah. So anyway, think nothing of it. I like hearing from other people and hearing other approaches, other ways of doing things, because That's what watching this series has been good for me, because I see all the ways that Casey does things. Never mind all of the knowledge that he's gathered over 2 to 3 decades of doing this for a living, and it's never a bad thing. Sometimes you can tell when somebody has a bad idea, and it's okay to recognize that. But the only way that you can know that something is bad when you see it is if you've taken in enough bad ideas and enough good ideas to where you can kind of draw a circle around each of those groups and be like, no, this is a bad idea. This is a good idea. My intuition, my expertise that I've built over the years has taught me these things. And otherwise you have no way to orient yourself if you're just closed off. But with something as simple as like, how am I doing a line break? Sometimes like I never thought about that sort of thing when I was writing Zig, because the language server for Zig would just automatically format my code for me all the time. And I was like, great, I don't have to think about this. If I want a line break, I can add one in the language server. Won't force things to be broken up. I guess there could have been a setting where I could have set like lines can only be this long, and maybe the compiler would have given me a warning if I made a line too long. But generally it just kind of forced things to be formatted a certain way. And so I have a little bit more flexibility with Odin, because while Odin may have that feature, I haven't bothered to turn it on. And it really just came down to me being too lazy to turn that feature on. But anyways, that's a long-winded way of saying feel free to chime in. It's not going to offend me. I can code and follow a formula. Good job. A formula? Deprogramming the machine and not using machine language, at least using assembly language. Yeah, I mean, I think you're reading a little bit too much into that phrase. When I talk about the machine, it's kind of a double entendre. It would be very painful for me to learn games programming with machine language. I'm sorry, I'm not that guy. I'm not trying to advertise myself as an assembly language guy. I'm just trying to learn games programming on stream. John mentions sometimes he did a lot of Lisp in university back when that was fashionable. Maybe Casey has some old experience with other language families. Maybe. I haven't heard him say anything to that effect. As far as I know, he's pretty much always done C and C++. But it does make sense, and I think I've actually heard that before. I'm assuming you're talking about JBlow, but that sounds right. And he would have had to try most likely different languages in university, because that's part of what taking university courses tends to push on you, is doing things in different languages. So anyway, let's just try and move forward here.
So what has to happen now is inside these functions where previously a tile map was sufficient, we are now going to need that world pointer, because the world pointer has all of the dimensional information in it. So basically everything previously that we were using the tile map pointer for now has to have the world pointer. And so that's a little bit of work we got to do. But
all I had to do was wait 5 more seconds, and he would have said exactly what I thought he was going to do, which was start passing in the world pointer here. Again, I don't understand at all why I'm getting that error on the types here not matching. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Well, this is a new check, is it not? No, because we wrote it for getting the tile value. And we wrote it down here. Oh, yeah, because we did the truncation. Duh, okay. That's what I'm missing here. And he put this code. Ah, okay. Now I understand why I fouled that up. Yeah, this test tile X and Y becomes an int. Wait a minute. Right? Yeah. Test X and Y becomes an int. But the problem is that this is still thinking that it's taking, yeah, we wanted that to take an int. We wanted that to take an int. Okay. Now that confusion that I had about that is fixed. In fact, I would have maybe noticed it over here. because this does take an int for tile X and Y. So we're good over there. And that means we can change this to a world, and we can pull this out into our tile index. And I'll just assign that up here. And we can simplify this assertion by saying that our tile index is greater than or equal to 0, right? And well, actually, is that? That is right. Yeah. We want our tile index to be greater than or equal to 0, and we want our tile index to be less than the bounds of the tile map. And then over here, if that assertion didn't fail, we can just grab out that tile map value. How do I want to format that? That looks fine. And what is this error going on about now? Cannot assign new player Y of type F32 to int in a procedure argument. Did I pass the wrong things in here? Seems I might have. Seems I might have. So we go through here and we say test style Y. Well, yeah, those are ints now. Wait, it's not even, I'm looking at the wrong place. What am I doing? What line is that at? Over here. Yeah, because we're going to call is world point empty on these now. And is world point empty takes a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay. I'll just let him get to that point, because clearly he's got a whole bunch of stuff here that he has to chew through.
Not too big of a deal, right? Not too big of a deal at all. Let's see what takes here. That goes there. Nothing, just cleaning, not doing anything special here, just cleaning up things. And then we're going to step through this and start to look at it and clean it up and fix any bugs that I no doubt have. Like I said many times on stream, it's hard for me to talk and program at the same time, people. It is. I make a lot of mistakes. Fortunately, the stream oftentimes catches them for me, so if we end the day with bugs that I haven't found, a lot of times the stream is right there to pick me up, and I appreciate that immensely, I can tell you that. So, okay, is world point empty? What did I do here? What did I totally just, this was me not paying attention to what I was editing there. Why do we have another function that is the same? How did I get multiple copies? I don't even know how that happened. I do not know. I'm probably going to find out in a second. When I go to compile and find, I accidentally edited like the wrong function, and now I have no functions left. So now we're in a much better position to clean this code up even, right? Because now that we have the world set up as well, the world can take all of these values that were very much more properly stored in the world, which means that this cloning stuff doesn't have to happen anymore, right? That cloning of the values that were in the tile maps, which again I said when we did it is sort of indicative that something is not quite right yet, that is gone. So that's a good cleanup. It means that we can now start to talk about sort of tile maps 0, 0 with world. There we go. It means we can start to talk about the world.
I see. My dog is over here pressing his paws into the door, making me think one of my kids is trying to... Not one of my kids. I know which kid it's going to be, because the youngest one can't walk yet, but making me think that my son is going to bust in the room whenever I hear sounds coming from the door. So all he does here, right, is... get rid of, well, yeah. So the point of wiping that out was simply that now that the world holds all of that stuff, then we don't need to clone off of the first tile map anymore, because it'll just grab all of that data off the world itself, which is great. And let's see, tile width and height. Yeah, all of that looks good. I guess I'll just try and format this closer to how he's doing it. And he actually is doing this up above, which makes sense. We declare all our tile maps. We say, well, we declare all our tiles. Yeah. All the tiles that go into our tile maps. We get our 2D array. We say this is our first one. And in fact, he does that here. Oh, that's not good. Well, it doesn't really matter. But basically, I was zeroing out the rest of the members of this struct when I was doing this. But it doesn't matter because this is the only thing that the tile map holds now. So really, I can just do this. Yeah. That does look much more better. I really want to assign a new constant that's just tile map count, so I don't have to look at this everywhere, but probably a pointless thing to do. Okay, we got our tile maps on the world, and looking good. Looking good. Let's see where we go next. Those asserts are not equivalent. Say you have a 5x5 world. X and Y, 6, 1 would trigger the first one, but 1 times 5 plus 6 equals 11 is less than 5 times 5 would not trigger the replacement. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. So the issue is not... So the assert is asserting that we're not going to go outside of the bounds of the slice, right? This is what I get, again, for trying to be too clever. See, this is why it's good that you're here. It's good for you to call me out, because that is something that I could have easily... if I can figure out where that assert is. I just want to make sure I keep the thought in my head so I don't forget. What was it? Down. It's get tile, right? It's like get tile value unchecked. Was it this here? Yeah, so I see what you're saying. The issue is that this assert neglects the fact that we're thinking about a tile map having a set of dimensions. And if we're trying to go off, like this indexes it properly, right? This says that the tile index is valid in the sense that whichever the calculation of the tile index turns out to be, we're grabbing a tile that is within the bounds of, you know, the list of tiles that we have when it's in a slice. But what you're saying is that actually doesn't mean that we're asserting that we're not trying to get like off of the tile map in X or Y. So that's a great catch. That's what I get for being clever. Thank you. So really, we simply cannot get clever with this, because this should be 0 and tile X is I was trying to think of like why that wouldn't be valid, and that's totally right. See, it's hard for me to transform my thinking in this way because I'm so used to like, does the query run fast enough? Good, let's move on to the next task. But that's a great point there, that just because we're valid and inside of the bounds of the slice does not mean, right, that the actual tile coordinates that we're passing in are not invalid, right? And so I think that's why we have to do this. And by the same token for the world, right? Because basically what this issue would lead to is that while we would never index outside of the slice because the assertion would fire, we could still pass in like incorrect tile values, and then we would be just asking for we would get the wrong tile map value out, which is actually much more insidious, right? Because then you'd be like, why the hell does the tile, what's going on here where the tile map value is just completely wrong that we're getting out of that call. So that's a great call out. Hey, Mark, welcome to the stream. Yeah, exactly. Like your comment here says, one way to think about it is the mapping from 2D to 1D loses information. Does that affect me? And I was trying to think about how it would. And I probably would have realized exactly what you pointed out much further down the line. Or maybe it would have happened, later in this episode. But new pointer argument equals new assert. Yeah, maybe. Well, the reason why he's doing this, right, is because we don't want to pass in a nil tile map. And if we ever call this, then it means that we should never have passed in a bad tile map. But I guess what he might say here, to us not asserting that the world isn't nil, is just that, like, a bunch of other things have to go wrong for us to get this far to where we're passing in a nil world, right? Like we would break here when we try to call count X and Y on the world before we ever even get into this point. Right, so I think that's probably why we won't add an assert there.
Properly and assign things there that are constant, and we don't have to worry anymore about sort of using a tile map to get that stuff, which is inappropriate.
Yes. That was something that was bugging me too. Whenever I just see a bunch of random nested array accesses, unless I already changed that, which is possible. Just jump on down here. Looks like I already changed that. I don't see that anywhere.
Because, again, we don't know which tile map we'd be talking about, and those values didn't actually vary across them. So what we have here now is we don't want to query is tile map point empty anymore. We just don't even want that at all. What we want is world point empty, right? We want to do is world point empty for our testing. And now we pass the world for that, not a tile map. We want to pass our world pointer. So we're going to ask it about the world. And we're going to go ahead and say that our test tile map x, y, and x and y, we're only passing the actual x and y inside the tile map. What we want to do now is also pass which tile map we believe the player to be on, which again we have. It's called player tile x and player tile y. Player tile y. That. Okay. So, there we go. And, oh, what did I do? Player tile.
Right. So, now we have to pass in that world. And I think this tile map should already be a pointer. Well, actually, we don't even know what tile map yet, right? So we need to, pass in the game states, player tile X and Y. I guess what I would say to that person in here earlier that was like, oh, you can copy somebody's code, but you're not even writing assembly, man. Like, if it's so easy, first of all, you go do it. It's not that easy to just copy what somebody's doing, especially because I'm doing it in a different language, and they might be pretty similar languages, but, what is your goal? Maybe you don't find games programming interesting in the least, and you just want to do everything in assembly. You want to write the next Facebook in assembly language, be my guess. Or, write whatever fun stuff it is that people do, write Roller Coaster Tycoon in assembly language. If that's your bag, man, great. Good for you. You should do what makes you happy, but I'll be over here doing what makes me happy, and we'll both exist, and the universe will not implode because two different people enjoy two different things. So I think this is right, but our types, I suppose, are still incorrect. What we're trying to map in here to this procedure call is we've got two ints for the test tile map X and Y. Those are fine. It doesn't look like it's complaining about that for me. I move this out of the way because I know my head will block the code if it's too low. Not that anybody's trying to copy me. God, no, don't try to copy me. Copy Learn from Casey by all means, but don't try to copy me. I guess I'll just see what the compiler says. I'm too close to the code, and I don't feel like zooming out and zooming in just to see what these errors are. So our new player X and Y are not ints. And we're also passing in, right, over here, actually not over here, down here, these column and row values are wait, what? Those are ints? Oh, it's because we want to pass in the world too. Right. Right.
Oh boy. So this is going to be something that's going to be really nice to clean up. I think probably based on how many we have in here already, I think next week is a good time to do it, so that's going to be good. But yes. All right. So anyway, let's see. Inside here, we need to pass the world pointer in. It looks like that's all that is. Looks like we're still using, we want to use the world for all of these references, like this. There we go. We've got the tile map here, which is also not right. We just, all of these things all moved over to the world, so that's good. Tile width, tile height, also in the world. Okay, so let's see what we're doing here. So are we still running? Let's see. Let's stop. Okay, so let's see. So we're still running, and that's good. But I think we've got some bugs here, so let's go ahead and see what's going on. All right, so let's step in and see what we're dealing with here. So is world point empty? We've got test tile map X, test tile map Y. Oh, because I had to step in the function.
So I must have missed something where maybe he made the types different, or I left something out, because these values here should be floats coming in. So if I back out here, huh. Is that what this error is telling me? Parameter test Y, new player X of type F32 to int. Let's just see what, there we go. See, the thing, it's nice that I can just build and run inside of my editor, but, you know, NVim is giving it to me in this messed up format here, and the colors aren't working, so helps if I can look at it here and see exactly. So it's complaining because we're trying to multiply. Well, no, the end result of this okay, what? Player width F32. So that gives us an F32. New player X should be an F32. I must be missing a parameter here. Yeah, we're not passing in the tile map. That's probably all. I thought, I don't know why I got rid of that, but that just lost me, like, I don't know, 3 minutes or however long I've been looking at this. Just like, why don't the types line up? How did this happen? Man, I'm gonna have to break this way up. This is just crazy wide. A benefit that, you know, I'm realizing now, because I was wondering, do I really want to write code with the code this big? It turns out you know, Dr. R over here, the code doctor, has been spotting mistakes for me. And I don't think it would be as easy to spot those mistakes if... we still got an error there, but I'll figure it out. It would not be as easy to spot those mistakes if I had my code, you know, way out here, wherever I would normally keep it. So what is this complaining about now? There's no field player tile X. So what is it? What is it then? Game state player tile map. Yeah. I don't like, why can't I just, my go to definition isn't working. My crutches are showing. I'm starting to lean too much on my editor here. Okay. Well, that is a real nasty conditional, but if it works, it works. And we still are calling get tile value unchecked somewhere without the world. But with that call being made, oh dear. We're so wide. We only have one left to go, I think. What's going on here? You're complaining about how the declaration of tile map... Okay. I guess this is what I thought. Yeah, okay. So I just failed to... That's why. Okay. So the reason why I pulled that tile map out was because I saw that we're getting the tile map value. I pulled the procedure parameter out because I saw that we were grabbing it inside of the isRolled point empty proc. I saw that that was happening. I was like, oh, we don't need to pass that anymore. And so that's why I spent all that time looking at those errors like, what the hell is going on here? So I actually did not need this in the end. Oh, jeez. I think this is probably fine. I'll just leave it like that. The zoom is appreciated by folks watching on small laptop screens. Well, I mean, never mind a laptop screen, dude. Like, look at it on your phone, and if the yeah, see, you caught that. I didn't even have a chance to peep the comments or the chat, and you caught that mistake too. But yeah, watching it on your phone, I mean, you would just have no hope if the code wasn't at least somewhat appreciably big. And I'm trying to like stay in this range. You know, like right here feels good. It's changing actually the way that I think about the code that I'm writing, because I am so used to being able to refer to like, where am I? Oh, I'm inside of this call. You know, if I have this much more code to look at, it helps me navigate where I'm at a little bit better. But this is forcing me to think a little bit harder about like, what is the actual problem that I'm in the middle of trying to deal with here. All right, so if we're running now, which I think we might be, and we're not moving around, so I wonder if Casey's is gonna do the same thing. We'll see if his is actually working.
Let's go ahead and see what's going on. All right, so let's step in and see what we're dealing with here. So is world point empty? We've got test tile map X, test tile map Y. Oh, that is that? Oh, because I hadn't stepped into the function yet. Right, on function entry, the stack isn't, I guess, correct yet for viewing those variables, so that's fine. I was like, what's going on there? That's not good. But yeah, I hadn't stepped into the function yet. That's fine. All right, so stepping through the function, we're at 0, 0 in our tile map, and that's fine. We are at test X, test Y. Here's where this is where our guy is, right? Oh, because I guess I was trying to move. That's interesting that that's where. I'm gonna actually look up. Was I actually moving? Was I actually trying to move? What's my D player X, D player Y? Oops, D player X. I didn't think I was trying to move, so I'm interested to know why it's looking at a non-even boundary. D player X, D player Y. So, game state, did my guy already move? He's at 150, 150. So, oh, right. that's because it's checking either side of the guy. So it's using half the player width to check on either side of the guy. That's why it's that. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you see what happened there? I was wondering why the test x was a fractional value, and it's because the player width is an even number. So when you divide it, I'm sorry, is an odd number, I guess. So when you divide it by 2, you get a fractional value. Is that correct? Is it actually an odd value? Yeah, it probably is, because it's probably a div by 2. So let's take a look actually at what the player width and height is, just to make sure that's true. So the player width back here, got to jump back out to the enclosing function player width. Yeah, it's 45. So excuse me. So the reason is because the tile width is 60, and the way that we initialized when I wrote the game just randomly is I said that a guy was going to be 3/4 the width of a tile, right? And if a guy is 3/4 the width of a tile, then it's dividing, it's multiplying by 3 divided by 4 kind of thing. It's multiplying by 0.75, whatever that tile width is, which gives us 45, which then when we divide by half to look on either side of the guy to test the 2 points on his left and right side, that ends up being a 45 divided by 2 offset, right? Which is of course a fractional value if you don't if you don't clamp it there. There we go, a fractional value. And so that is why when we look in here, this is not an even value. So I just want to make sure that was right, and it is. That's all fine. So now we figure out which tile we're looking at. Test tile X, test tile Y. Oops, tile Y. We're looking at tile 2, 2. We go in here and we see that none of our cases trigger, which is correct. We are not out of bounds. We then need to get the tile map that corresponds to our test tile map X and our test tile map Y. So we step in here and we go ahead and check to see if we are in bounds. We are in bounds, which is good. We then retrieve the tile map itself. So here is the tile map itself. That is good. And it's got the tiles in it. Nothing particularly interesting to see there. We've got the tile map. We then want to ask whether our using the tile map that we know the guy's in, whether our location in that tile map is empty or not. Oh, well, and then we don't assign it to anything. So we've got one bug, which is basically that this empty, which is what we return, we never actually assign to empty. So that's a bug. We'll fix that in a second. We check to see if the tile map points empty. Let's see what happens in there. We look to see if we have a tile map. We do, because we fetched one properly. We look to see whether we're in bounds. We are. We then ask our accessor to look inside the tile.
So I noticed this earlier too. I noticed that we weren't assigning anything to the result of this proc call. And in fact, I don't need to instantiate empty because I just need to assign it. And so we were always returning false from is world point empty, right? Because we were only allowed to move if that point in the world is empty. So I noticed that, and then I didn't actually make any changes because I keep coding myself into a buggy place by trying to do anything different from him, but it is helping me learn. So, this is one of those cases where maybe I should have just gone ahead and assigned it, because then it would have worked. Because I think this will work. Yep. And this is where I wanted to get to. I'm gonna wrap up the stream now. It's always good to wrap up in a working state. But this is a pretty long day, so probably be working on it through the rest of tomorrow. It's like a 2-hour-long episode. So I'll let Casey kind of walk through the rest of this little debugging session and then wrap it up.
Tiles. It uses the sort of 2D, 1D packing thing I talked about yesterday to go pull out the value for the particular tile using the X and Y. We return that out. We look to see whether or not it's equal to 0, which would mean empty in our case. We return it, and then of course we throw the value away. That all looks like it works. The only thing that's wrong with it is we don't actually use the return value, so we definitely have a bug. But other than that, it looked pretty okay. Let's go ahead and fix that, and then we'll play with it and see if that works. All right, where was that guy? There was that guy, right here. Empty equals. There we go. Okay, so let's try that again. All right, so now we are walking around just fine. Looks pretty good. And now we should, in theory, be able to walk off this edge. I don't know if we can or not. Nope. So that doesn't quite work correctly at the moment. So I thought it looked correct, but it probably, maybe we've got a bug still in our other cases where we handle walking. Well, that one does. So that one actually did work a little bit because we can walk off one side there. So it's starting to work a little bit, but we're still a little bit buggy. All right, so let's fix that. And then once we fix that, we actually only have one other thing to do before we can actually walk between tile maps. And because all we have to do to walk between tile maps after that is actually look to see when our test point, our new player location, moves off of the screen and switch to a new tile map. All right, so what's our bug? What have we got there? What's going on? So what we want to...
Okay, I will meditate on what exactly that bug might happen to be. And I feel like I'm just moving so slow. I want to go ahead and drive the dplayer X and Y up to 128 so I can move just a little bit quicker. In fact, even that is a bit too slow. So I'm going to go ahead and double it once more. Now we're moving. And same thing, I can move halfway off of this tile map, but other than that, we're stuck here. And then down here, I think I already tested this, but yeah, we can't move off. So I wonder what that bug is. I'm going to think about it from now until tomorrow when I stream again. And then we'll fix it and then just keep moving on. Let's see here. Something regarding the compiler editor integration to leave you with. Vim has a quick fix list which parses error messages and lets you jump to them. You do something like let make PRG and oh, that's right, my alerts. Well, thanks for following RCRNSTN. I gotta come up with a better nickname for you, but until then, thanks for the follow. Let make PRG equals the Odin command you use to compile, and then do make. Yeah. Yeah, I should do something like that. There's a bunch of little things like that, you know, that I know I need to think about and get more acquainted with when it comes to Vim to use it as effectively as I can use it. It's just a constant like struggle between like how good do I want to get at my editor versus how much stuff do I actually want to write. And I think like I want to say, I'm trying to remember, I think it was probably like a year or two ago when I switched completely over to NeoVim from VS Code. And it was a pretty painful, well, actually what I had done is I had used Vim bindings in VS Code for like a year. And then somewhere down the line, a year after switching to Vim bindings in VS Code, I just overhauled everything over to using NeoVim. And in that, as part of that process, I learned a whole bunch of stuff, right? But then it was like, okay, I've spent a lot of time messing with my editor and getting better at using Vim bindings. And now I'm at a point where like it's rare that I feel out of sorts with what it is I'm trying to do. I feel pretty fast generally, but the errors and dealing with them, part of it is just the language server. Well, I shouldn't always be defaulting to using just the error messages as they present to me in my editor. Whoops. Like when they pop up in this little dialog here, when the thing fails to compile, I shouldn't be doing I shouldn't be looking at those errors inside of my editor. I should just go over to the terminal, let the compilation fail, and then just start scanning the errors to see what's going on. And I probably would have caught that issue with the proc parameters a lot sooner. But yeah, certainly there's a lot to dive into. But yeah, absolutely. It's just a matter of like, when do I want to spend a lot of time getting better at my editor again? It comes in waves, right? It's easy to get stuck configuring and no one is ever optimal in Vim anyway. Yeah, it's like, just use it the way that you know how to use it best. And if something really starts to nag at you, like, I think the error thing is just also a degree of getting comfortable coding on stream for me. So I just have to get more and more comfortable with it, and then I'll make less mistakes the more I do it. I've used it for years and not sorted out the debugging situation. I agree, coding is an important thing. Yeah, you're on the same page as me. And the debugging thing, to that point, I was just saying yesterday that I would really like to get a good debugger configuration going with Odin, working with Odin. I know a buddy of mine has gotten it working well with VS Code, but I don't want to have to use VS Code. So I have heard from Carl Zielinski, who is a pretty strong advocate for Odin, that the RAD debugger works pretty well, but he uses Sublime. So I don't know where that's all going to fit in. But anyways, my kids are, I can hear them giving my wife hell out there, so I got to go help her out.